Hey guys, it's Courtney from Willow's Bloom, and I am here today to talk to you about a very important topic, which is about how to live up to our highest potential. And when we think about how to live up to our highest potential, my first question is, well, what's stopping you? And I want you guys to maybe just close your eyes for a second and see a movie plot play out on the screen in front of you. And how does that main character become who they were meant to be by the end? Is through all of the trials and tribulations that they go through. And if your eyes are still closed, you can open them. But the reason I bring that up is because when we are born in our astrology chart, we have certain aspects that are going to denote certain struggles that we will go through. And these often become ingrained as personality traits and experiences. Sometimes it's just a singular experience. Sometimes it's something that you go through again and again. Regardless, it usually inhabits itself within your body as a character trait. And this trait can be the reason that you reach the greatest success in life, or it can be the reason for your downfall. And so that is what we're going to talk about today, how to live in the highest vibration of your personal chart and your unique life and blueprint. And if you want to know, well, what is my unique essence? What am I here to do out in the world? That's my previous video. Check that out. I'll link it down below. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to utilize your struggle, your hero's journey to transform into the person that you were meant to be. So this video topic was really born out of the question that I get as an astrologer all the time, which is, am I going to keep experiencing this over and over? Because I'll point out a difficult aspect, something that people are going through, and without them even saying anything, I'll be like, it's this, this, and this in your life. It's resulting like this in your psychology. It's affecting you this way. And that's why I recently moved over to astrology coaching, because now I can actually help people work through those things. And they'll be concerned that it's just going to be on repeat for their entire life. And the good news is that we have the potential to access the higher vibration of any aspect, planet, sign, house in our chart. So nothing is a static energy. It's always moving, changing, and evolving. And the archetype of that energy will generally remain the same. So the relationship, for example, between two planets will remain the same because of their aspects. But how you work with that energy and if it's in the lower or higher vibration is completely dependent on you and your ability to heal, move through stuff, and utilize it in a more positive way. So what am I talking about exactly? I'm talking about difficult aspects in our chart that usually come about as trials and tribulations in our life, which cement as personality traits that we might find difficult or internal blockages, I should say. So for example, planets in the 6th, 8th, and 12th houses will tend to manifest in a more negative way. That's not always going to be the case, but planets here will tend to be on the lower vibration and have to go through an ascension process to the higher vibration. Again, not always the case. So if you want to learn astrology or if you want to get a reading from me or something to kind of understand what fits you best, then, do that. The other thing to look for are hard aspects and sometimes conjunctions. This is going to be especially true for the two malefics, Saturn and Mars. Let's say you have Sun square Saturn, Moon square Saturn, or you have Sun opposite Mars. You're definitely going to experience some kind of trial and tribulation as a result of that energy, but it can eventually be turned into something extremely positive. And we're going to talk about examples of what that looks like. And in my next video, we're going to talk about actually how to do that and discovering more of the origin of what the exact issue is for you. So planets, again, in hard aspects, squares, 90-degree angles, or oppositions directly across in the chart, are, especially from Mars and Saturn, will produce the most obvious results in your life as being a hindrance. But even conjunctions as well can do that. And even squares and oppositions to planets, the outer planets like Uranus, Pluto, Neptune. These can produce their own difficult results. And again, in the next video, I'll kind of talk about what that would look like exactly, because they each have their own specific hindrances and their own specific things that you would need to overcome on your hero's journey, as well as aspects to the South Node and Chiron. So the South Node has a diminishing force, and Chiron is very much a wounding asteroid in our chart. So these two elements, although most astrologers, or not all astrologers, will look at them as, in terms of what I'm saying, those are very obvious to me. So I have, for example, Sun on the South Node, and confidence has been something I've really had to work on, because the Sun is our ego, so our identity, our sense of confidence, and the South Node diminishes. So if you have Venus South Node, you might find that your relationships are sometimes a struggle. And that's not always going to be the case, but again, you'll start to see, okay, this particular area of my life has been a really annoying, reoccurring issue. So just ask yourself, what's one thing that has been happening on repeat over and over and over again? And that is going to be representative of an aspect, a difficult aspect in your chart. Or you can look at a traumatic incident, something that happened even once, that has really made its own impact on you. And that will be a aspect that I'm talking about in your chart. So these are the hurdles. These are the walls to climb in our hero's journey, the person that we have to battle, the country that we have to defeat in order to become who we are meant to be, in order to reach our highest potential. And so a lot of this, it's not only just going through a difficult experience, but it's about the after effects of that difficult experience. So for example, Sun South Node, Sun's the father, not just the ego, it's also the father. South Node is lessening. I lost my father at a young age. So Sun South Node can sometimes represent that. And so it wasn't just like, oh, I lost my father and that's represented my chart and there you go. It's all the repercussions as a result of losing my father. And this is why people are so scared. They're like, am I going to keep experiencing this over and over and over again? Because usually the repercussions will stay with us. We do tend to experience them more than once. They're like throwing a stone in the pond, and all of these ripples are the effects of that traumatic experience in our lives. And that's what these aspects can sometimes represent. And so from that loss of my father, I have definitely had to work through a lot of stuff. And I think it does relate to the confidence. All those things are compounding into one. So you can really start to see, okay, maybe I didn't have the nice structure and support that I needed. And so as a result, So you can start to kind of break down your own psychology of why something happened, what's going on underneath the surface. And you can ask yourself, how can I transform this difficult experience and stop these ripples and change those directions into a higher vibrational experience, into a superpower? And this is when that person who's about to be defeated rises up from the ground, grabs their sword, and goes with all of their might to attack the enemy ahead. And so for many of us, there's something in our chart that we have to rise up beyond the momentum of those ripples, beyond all of the odds that are against us, and fight back to create a different story for ourselves. And because it takes so much exertion and so much effort, it becomes our superpower. It becomes a thing that people look up to us for, that is inspiring to others, that makes us different or special or unique, or be able to handle different things in the future that others wouldn't be able to handle. So this particular aspect of yourself has the potential to be your secret weapon and your superpower on your life journey. And you can pair this with your unique essence to discover how you can impact others in a really profound way. So if you are looking for help with this in particular, I am offering astrology coaching where I will help you understand what those aspects of your chart are and work with you every week to actually overcome them. And I've done this for myself recently, along with other coaches. Every person needs a coach or a therapist, which I have both. And it's been really transformative. So if you are sick of being stuck in those same cycles, let me know. I'm only accepting a handful of people. Okay, so now I want to get into what it looks like to transcend from the lower to the higher vibration. So I'm going to talk about each planet and what it looks like in the lower vibration and what it looks like then in the higher vibration. And you can start to kind of assess for yourself, I maybe fall a little bit here, a little bit there, but you'll notice that these energies are the same coin. but they're two sides of the same coin. So it's like, you'll see, they're very, very similar. Okay, so for example, the sun. The sun is about our purpose and our wisdom. It's our identity, it's our confidence, our ability to shine bright, maybe have fame. But in the lower vibration, it's more egotistical or more sensitive ego that's wounded and needs to be pet. And more self-absorbed. I want to be famous because I'm into myself, that kind of thing. So the lower and the higher vibration are very similar, two sides of the same coin. The moon is all about understanding our own intuition and our needs and emotions. And in the lower vibration, it's about passivity and moodiness. So not taking action towards your goals, being very kind of emotionally influenced in terms of your goals. But we want to be in tune with our emotions and needs, but not so much so that we don't have any discipline, right? So that's the moon in its high and low vibration. Mercury is all about being intelligent and adaptable, but in the low vibration, it can be fickle. So maybe you're too adaptable to the point where you never show up, you don't know what you're going to get, or maybe you are lying and you're gossiping and you're using your intelligence and your communication skills in a destructive way. Venus is about being harmonious and beautiful in the positive vibration, all about putting relationships at the center of your life. But in the low vibration, it's overly focusing on relationships so that you maybe don't have the proper boundaries. You are way too much of a people pleaser. You are blinded by love. You really see the best in people. This can also be true for Neptune, very similar. You can be vain, so the desire for seeking beauty becomes too superficial. So you can start to see, again, two sides, same coin. Mars is about being assertive and passionate and ambitious. But in the negative context, it's angry and selfish, and it's always following its own desires on a whim. So it's not even concentrated effort. So you can see kind of, well, where do I tend to fall? Jupiter is about having faith and wisdom from the universe. When it's in its low vibration, it's overindulgent. And it also is too optimistic, which is definitely a thing. So it's like, I'm not willing to see that things could go wrong. I'm not planning. I'm being optimistic that everything's going to work out. And maybe I'm overeating, overspending, and not thinking about long-term consequences. And Saturn is the perfect balancing planet because Saturn in its high vibration is all about having boundaries, structure, and a strong work ethic. In Saturn's low vibration, it is way too rigid. It's very much stuck energy, fearful. And it also can feel like it turns to reality and sees something that is a little bit pessimistic, because Saturn is the dose of reality that is going to help us in our lives, especially paired with Jupiter, can help us plan, know what to be optimistic about and what not to be. But in its negative form or its low vibration, it's super pessimistic. It can lead to depressiveness. Uranus is all in the high vibration about change and progressiveness and open-mindedness. In its low vibration, it is unstable and can often have too much change, and it likes to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't want the old. I don't want any of the old. When some of the old would be good and some new would be good. Neptune is about creativity and spirituality, sensitivity. But in the low vibration, it can lead to escapism, illusion, becoming floaty and detached from reality. So when you hear about spiritual bypassing, this is Neptune in its low energy or low vibration. Pluto is all about being powerful, truthful, and magnetic and influential. But in its low vibration, it's more about controlling people and being fearful, maybe having secrets. So utilizing this power against people. That's often Pluto in the low vibration. So again, look at your chart, look at your aspects, look at the low, high vibe of these planets and ask yourself, how am I embodying the planets in my chart? Even if they're not in a hard aspect, we can still move into low vibrations or high vibrations depending on our mindset. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about some examples of people who have taken hard aspects of their chart and have transformed them into a really incredible story and experience that have basically utilized these difficult things to become their highest version of themselves. And one of these people is Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah has Mars making a square to Pluto in her chart. So as I mentioned, Mars in its high vibration is assertive, passionate, ambitious, and Pluto is powerful, influential, magnetic, truthful. So while these are in a square in her chart, these are very much things that have come together in her life in a really beautiful way. We can see that she is somebody who's overcome so much adversity. I mean, simply by being a Black woman in the United States, she's already overcome so much adversity. And then on top of that, when we look back in her childhood, we can see that she was actually sexually abused, which is unfortunately very common with the Mars square Pluto aspect. Not always going to be the case, of course, but Mars in its negative form is anger, selfishness, and Pluto is about controlling, fear, and secrets. So you can see how when these planets are in their negative essence, it resulted in an experience in her life. I'm not saying she attracted it, but it was almost like a predetermined experience that she was meant to have where she was abused. And the negative aspects of those planets were in full force in her life. And then she was able, through her own hero's journey, to understand these planets and harness them for the power that they have and utilize them to achieve this great success by having, of course, a huge media channel, by being super wealthy, super famous, having a huge impact. So the very part of her where her own will was taken from her and dominated by another became her own indomitable will that no one's going to stop me. So you can see it directly corresponds to this experience in her life, but it also directly corresponds to this aspect in her chart. So that point where this was not a weakness, but a challenge. For some of us, it may be a weakness. It transforms into the very thing that is fuel to the fire of your success and your rise as a person. Another really amazing example is David Goggins. If you guys don't know David Goggins, I read his book. He's a super motivational guy. He is a Navy SEAL, and he started off his life in not the best circumstances. He had an abusive father. He grew up in, he's also African American, but he grew up in kind of like a white area of town. And his father, just everything on the outside made it look like it was perfect. Like his father was wealthy. I think they owned a skate rink, if I'm not mistaken. They worked there. And he was basically just consistently abused his entire life until eventually he escaped, and he kind of, with his mother, and he kind of like made this really subpar life for himself. He was killing rodents or cockroaches and was super overweight and wasn't taking care of himself, not sleeping well, and just kind of living this version of himself that didn't align with who he wanted to be. And then one day he decided to transform this harsh inner critic that felt like, I'm not worthy, I can't do anything, I'm not doing good enough. And he transformed it into somebody who would constantly challenge themselves to step outside their comfort zone and do more and more and more. And so he went from being abused, living a really subpar life in his own terms, and then coming to a state of having indestructible will. So nothing being able to stop him. You know, all of the training, the harsh physical runs that he would do outside in the snow, maybe even barefoot. He would swim in ice cold water. He would run for miles and miles holding the boats on his shoulders in the Navy SEAL training. There's so much shit that he went through. But before, he was just a normal guy. And that's what I'm talking about with the chart, how we can transcend this thing that we use, the thing that, first of all, started off as a difficult life circumstance that becomes this coping behavior, that we're stuck in this cycle that we don't like, and then we transcend it to become very powerful. That is the journey that I'm talking about. That is the hero's journey. For him, he had Mars opposite Saturn, square Chiron. one of the most difficult aspects to have. Because Mars, Saturn are difficult, Chiron is already difficult. So they just, all in these hard aspects, tend to produce that sense of inadequacy and impotency. Feeling like my will isn't getting me anywhere. I'm worthless. Da da da. Like whatever you need to take action towards something, which is the energy of Mars. It's our ambition. It's our drive to succeed, to go out and do things. It was being stopped by Saturn, which is in the low energy, just stuck. And so he's getting angry at himself, the low energy of Mars, and stuck, the low energy of Saturn, and squaring Chiron, which is all around childhood wounding. So it's all coming from that place. So he's just stuck in this horrible cycle, eating poorly, feeling badly about himself. And I can relate to this because I recently had a big transformation with this in my life. And then he transcended that into the higher vibration, where Mars is now used as his indomitable will, his ambition, his drive, his passion. And Saturn is now used as an incredible work ethic, so disciplined, not willing to give up. In Chiron, there might still be some wounding there because Chiron is always a little sensitive, but Chiron is here fueling it as a path towards healing that wound. So he has transformed this difficult experience into the thing that made him famous, that made him write a book, go on podcasts, be well known, because he was a person who said it's the power of the mind and our ability to stop bitching and making excuses and going easy on ourselves. And that gets you to that success. And he was the one who had that journey because he had that difficult aspect, that difficult experience as a child, and completely transcended and transformed it into the higher vibration. So we all have this opportunity as well. Of course, those are two really famous people. They have also good aspects in their chart, things that are working for them. But that doesn't mean that we also don't have the opportunity to transcend and transform those areas of our lives as well. We just might not reach infinite stardom like they do, but we will be an impactful and powerful person in our bubble of the world that we touch. So this is, I think, just so important. And if you guys are curious about what this looks like in your chart, then definitely book a session with me. The next video that I'm going to be doing is about how to identify what's holding you back. So we're going to actually sit and kind of break down these aspects a little bit and these planets a little bit and go into what each of them tends to carry in terms of energy. So for example, like a square to Uranus is going to bring a flighty person. That might be something you have to overcome. Too much change, too much variability. Whereas a square to Saturn can lead you to feeling stuck. So it's very different energies around where you're going to struggle in order and what you need to transform in order to reach your highest potential. So again, the next video will be about what's holding you back. And if you haven't already seen my video on what your essence is, definitely check that out, because that is essentially what these difficult hurdles in your life are going to protect and fight for. You know, it's like, it's this part of me that needs to see that others need to see in me, that needs to make its impact, but I can't if I keep getting stuck in these cycles. So how do I reach this highest version of myself? And then lastly, if you want a full not forecast, if you want, it's kind of like a forecast, but if you want all of the transits for 2023, I spent many hours writing out a Notion template where I have every single day the important transits that are happening along with the energy. So that's kind of like a forecast in that way of that transit. So for example, if Venus is conjunct the sun one day, that might be a really good day for love and understanding, having clarity around relationships. And so you'll kind of see that in the breakdown. So if you're interested, I will link that down below, as well as last week's essence video. And I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Bye.